Hi everyone, and welcome to my very first episode of Conversations That Count. I'm your host Jeihan, and I can't even begin to tell you how excited and honestly a little nervous I am to have you here with me today. Launching this podcast feels like stepping into something new and vulnerable, and I'm so grateful that you've chosen to press play and join me. I wanted to start this first episode by sharing a little bit more about me, who I am, why I created this podcast, and what Conversations That Count is really about. I hope that by the end of the episode you feel like you know me a little bit better and that we're starting this journey together on the right note. Let me start by asking you a question. What's your story? We all have one, the highs, the lows, the twists we didn't see coming. Our stories are what shape us, what teach us, and ultimately define who we are. But here's something I've learned. It's not just about the story itself, it's about what you do with it. How you take those moments, those lessons, and use them to move forward, to grow and to create impact. And that's what truly counts. For as long as I can remember, I've been fascinated by people. I love hearing their why, what drives them, what fuels their fire, and the experiences that have shaped them. Everyone has a really unique perspective, and when we share those perspectives, something magical happens. We connect, we inspire each other, and we teach each other. Books and courses can only take us so far. The real growth happens in action, in conversations, and in those moments when someone else's story shifts something in you. And that's why I've created this podcast. I want to have those kinds of conversations with you, the raw, the real, and deeply human ones. This podcast is about getting to know the heart of what makes us human. It's about exploring the stories of incredible people, from business people and leaders to entrepreneurs to artists to coaches and everyday humans doing extraordinary things. But more than that, it's about understanding their why. What were their pivotal moments? What lessons have they learnt? And how have they used their stories to create impact? Not just in their lives, but in the lives of others. Some episodes will feature inspiring guests, while others will just be me, sharing my thoughts and my lessons on self-leadership, on growth, on resilience, and creating a life of purpose. My goal is to make every episode feel like a conversation with a friend, one that leaves you inspired, empowered, and maybe even a little bit more connected to your own story. Since this is the first episode, I thought it would only be fair to start with my story. And instead of overthinking it, which I have been, I've decided to treat myself like one of my guests and answer the kinds of questions I'd ask them, and also knowing that you'll get to know me during the podcast. So here goes. I'm Jeihan. I'm the co-founder of We're Mindfluencers. It's a company focused on developing self-leadership skills for current and aspiring female leaders. We help people grow personally and professionally in both life and work settings. But the journey to this point wasn't easy. A few years ago, I was going through one of the hardest periods of my life, and I'll touch on that in a moment. I was feeling stressed, anxious, and completely overwhelmed. I felt stuck. At that time, I was working for a big company, and I started looking at the tools they offered for personal development and working out what to do next. Honestly, there wasn't a lot available for me. And don't get me wrong, I don't believe it's a company's job to help you find yourself or your life's purpose. However, considering how much time of our lives we spend at work, it's kind of impossible to separate our personal and our professional lives as both impact each other. Companies invest so much in technical training and what requires you to do the job, but what about the people themselves? What about helping individuals build confidence, understand their strengths, or navigate challenges, or how to build resilience, how to communicate effectively, or how to build rapport? For me, that was a huge gap. If people are the heart of the company, then why aren't companies having more of a focus on the people? When the company didn't offer what I was hoping it would offer, I started to look externally as I wanted to grow as a person. And with my background in HR and coaching, and it also being my passion, it's a part of what has inspired me to create We're Mindfluencers. But the biggest inspiration came from my story. There's this analogy I love that life sends you signs. It's always communicating with you if you're listening. And so the signs can come in forms of a feather, a brick, or a truck. A feather, those lighter little nudges to say, hey, what are you doing there? A brick, the sign to get that sign that gets a little bit louder for you and you start paying attention. And if you're not, well, that's the truck moment, which essentially is a complete course correct and a shake up from the universe. And I feel like most people have experienced this in their life. And for me, that truck hit about 7 years ago. It started with a breakup I didn't see coming. I had my life all planned out with my partner at the time. We had the house, the career, the car, planning a wedding and a family, and in an instant, everything changed. It was a breakup that I didn't see coming, yet one I can now look back on, and it makes perfect sense as to why it happened. Going through a breakup and experiencing heartbreak is hard. You're grieving a life that you thought you were going to have, and with a person you thought was your forever person. That alone was pretty tough and emotional for me. And to add to the mix, the same week my dad was hospitalized and was there for close to 2 months. There were several times when my family and I said goodbye to him as we didn't think that he was going to make it. His health deteriorated pretty quickly and was later diagnosed with dementia and has been in an aged care facility ever since. For anyone who has a family member who has dementia, I see you. Like, it's hard, and people always say it's harder for the families going through that than the person itself. And even now when I see him, sometimes he looks straight through me and doesn't know who I am. And other times he tells me these really random stories about his childhood or something like so bizarre. And it's really heartbreaking. I'll be honest, I was struggling a fair bit during that time and didn't know what I needed or how to communicate it. I thought it would be a good idea to take a year-long sabbatical and go traveling. Look, some would say that it was my eat, pray, love year and going to find myself. And others would say I was running away and avoiding the uncomfortable truth of my reality. And now looking back at it, I can say that it was probably a bit of both. It's like the water buffalo. When a storm approaches, most animals instinctively turn away from it and they try and run from it. They move in the same direction as the storm, which often prolongs their exposure to it since the storm is moving in the same direction that they are. The water buffalo, on the other hand, they turn and face the storm head on. Instead of running from it, they change directly into the storm. And by doing so, they move through it faster and minimize the time spent in the storm's chaos. During that time, I was definitely moving away from the storm. I needed to get away and to figure out what my next move was and who I was now that I was single. At the time, I didn't realize how much of my identity was wrapped up in the relationship. During that time away, I remember I was in Vietnam and I received a call from my mum. I still remember the exact conversation. She said, "Who are you with? Where are you? And can you talk?" And to this day, I remember where I was, who I was with, and what I was doing as she said the words, "I have cancer." And I'm still getting emotional just thinking about this. Being so far away from home and receiving a call like that was heartbreaking. And I know it was heartbreaking for my mum to make it as well. My mum went through chemo treatment and unfortunately lost her battle with cancer about 18 months later. And even thinking about it and talking about it, obviously, it just brings up so much emotion because that time was hard. You are so helpless when you see someone you love so sick and you just wish that you could do something there. All of this happened in the space of about 2 years. And I don't know about you, but that's a lot for anyone. No matter how good your mindset or how optimistic you are about life, it felt like my life was crumbling. I remember sitting in my Brisbane apartment during lockdown and feeling pretty numb. And I kept asking myself, is this it? Is this what life is supposed to be? And I realized I was just existing and not living. For me, that was a massive wake-up call that I needed. And it was up to me and only me to change. There is this saying that what you're not changing, you're choosing. So I decided to make a change and start doing all the things I said I was going to. I climbed Everest Base Camp and I did salsa lessons and I traveled through Central America. You kind of get the picture there. I was starting to say yes to a lot more. One of the easiest and quickest ways to change is to change your environment. So I packed up my life and moved to the Gold Coast, and I know that's not too far from Brisbane. However, moving somewhere where you don't know anyone, it gives you the opportunity to essentially recreate yourself exactly the way you want. It makes you step outside your comfort zone and re-establish life on your terms. What's important to you? What do you value? And start doing the things that you really want to do. Moving to the Gold Coast forced me to face a lot of the big questions. Who am I? What do I want? What kind of life do I want to create? And the personal development world is pretty big on the coast, and I dove straight in. It was my water buffalo moment, and I faced the things head on and ran towards the storm. I became a master practitioner in NLP so that I could make sense of my own mind, the programs and my belief system, and how I was unconsciously creating the things in my life. I became a breathwork facilitator to make sense of my nervous system and how to regulate it, and the importance of listening to your body and the clues it's giving you. Both of which I will talk more into on the podcast because I'm really passionate about those particular topics. Basically, any modality I found useful in my own transformation, I lent in and made the commitment to myself to master it so I could share with others on a similar path. The biggest lesson I learned, if your internal world creates your external reality, then the most important work you can do is on yourself. It wasn't easy, and to be honest, it's a constant journey. In every interaction and situation, you're always given the opportunity to learn something about yourself. It's how you react, how you behave, and what makes you, you. And this is in all scenarios, including how you show up for work and business. By doing this work and rediscovering myself, I realized how important it is and how much it can change your life. And it's a big reason why I started the company. And it's why I'm here with this podcast, to share these lessons and have conversations that remind you that you're not alone. If I could leave you with a few more lessons from my journey, that'd be these. Number 1, life is precious. Don't wait for someday or one day or until you're retired. The time is now, so do the things you've always wanted to do and follow your heart. 2, hard moments reveal your strength. It's not about what happens to you, it's about how you respond that count. Life is always happening for you. Every failure is a learning. Every rejection is a redirection. Everything is always working out exactly the way it's meant to. 3, your mindset is everything. The way you think you can either limit you or set you free. Your mind is such a powerful tool, and once you understand how you think, your patterns, your programs, trust me when I say it's an absolute game changer. And 4, change starts with you. No one else can do it for you. Take the driver's seat of your life and decide who you want to be. I know I've only touched on some of my story, and there are so many more layers and lessons and pivotal moments that have shaped me to be me, which I know we'll dive into further at a later stage. But before we wrap up, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for starting this journey with me. It actually means the world to me. This podcast and the reason I started it is as much for me as it is for you. So if this episode resonates with you or future episodes resonate with you, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave me a review, send me a message or a comment, as I'd love to hear from you. And I'm looking forward for you to join me in the next episode where we'll dive into another conversation that counts. So until then, remember your story matters and it's what you do with it that truly counts.